Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro appearing in federal court in New York City today. Prosecutors charging him with narcotics trafficking, human rights violations, and corruption involving billions of dollars. U.S. officials say special operations forces executed a near-perfect raid late Friday using helicopters and drones to breach the compound near Caracas, capturing Maduro and his wife without American casualties. Both were flown to a U.S. military base in Puerto Rico, then transported to New York under very tight security. The Venezuelan government condemning the mission as an illegal act of aggression, while U.S. officials insist it was a lawful international operation. Members of Congress briefed for the very first time on this today, pushing back on the lack of congressional approval. Joining us live tonight is NBC News military analyst, retired four-star Army General Barry McCaffrey. General, thanks so much for joining us.
Good to be with you, Joyce.
Okay, first, let's just talk about this military operation. Walk us through how this went down.
Well, I think from a military perspective, it was a near flawless operation, astonishing. We went in at night into a city of 3 million people, secured Maduro and his wife as prisoners. There were law enforcement officers present also, and then flew them out without getting them killed. So that's the good news. To do that, they had to suppress air defense systems. The Venezuelans have Russian advanced fighters. They have S-300 missile batteries. They turned out the lights in the city to facilitate it. And at the end of the day, the Army Delta Force operators went in and shot it out with Cuban agents and killed some 30 of them, according to the Cuban government. So it was really a first-rate operation. There were some U.S. troops wounded, we believe, but essentially it was an unbelievable success. The question, Joyce, is where's page 2? What are we supposed to do next? And I think the larger problem is the President of the United States sought no counsel from Congress under Article 1 powers of the Constitution, and now has continued in his rhetoric threatening the country of Colombia with military action, threatening Greenland with military action, threatening Mexico with military action. It's an astonishing situation where he appears to be out of control and violating the law.
And one wonders what precedent does this set, because what keeps Russia from doing the same thing or China from doing the same thing? What precedent is it?
Well, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about, does this give a green light to President Xi to seize Taiwan and Putin to continue attacking NATO countries? I actually don't think that's it. They don't need the justification of Trump's action in Venezuela to pursue their own national interests. And we ought to be concerned about both those countries. Now, having said that, I think what it does indicate is the end of the rule of law in the international community. It's not just the raid into Venezuela. Trump's entire conduct of foreign policy, it looks as if it's ruled by decree, ruled by whim. It does not appear that he feels bound by Congress in any way. So I think NATO in particular no longer believes that the U.S. is a partner, a trusted partner in deterrence. And I think countries like Japan and South Korea and Australia, they're all coming to the same conclusion that we look to be a lawless rogue nation.
As you know, there's been a significant troop buildup, about 15,000 American troops now in the Caribbean. So what should they expect? And what do you think about whether we might see boots on the ground in Venezuela?
I think there is zero chance of anyone with their sanity remaining trying to conduct ground operations inside Venezuela. To do what? And by the way, most of the Venezuelan people are thrilled and relieved that Maduro is gone. But he left behind a Trump apparent recognition that the Chavista movement, with their terrible repression, murder, abduction, kidnapping, torture of Venezuelan citizens, 8 million of whom are now refugees in the international community. I think we're stuck with a situation situation on the ground. Well, there's no follow-on notion. We're not going to run Venezuela. We're not going to put troops on the ground. We're not going to, Shell Oil and Chevron are not going to go in and put 10 years of multi-billion-dollar investment in Venezuela if there isn't some lawful regime. So it's sort of a mess. What are we supposed to do next? And the answer is we don't know.
And finally, we've just been looking at some video. As you mentioned, there are lots of people abroad in Venezuela and here at home, particularly in Florida and across the nation, that are ecstatic that Maduro's in U.S. custody. But as you also point out, his generals and admirals are still in control there. They are still operating under his regime. So what do you think is the immediate next step? What does happen now?
Well, it was astonishing that Mr. Trump walked away from the Democratic opposition movement, not just Ms. Machado, but the entire opposition movement. He said, no, I'm going to deal with this criminal regime. And by the way, that regime basically has its control over the security forces, the police, the military, the colectivos who are abusing and repressing the people. The 2,200 some odd generals and admirals in Venezuela have drug money and illegal oil sales going to China on the Ghost Fleet. That's their corruption money. They're not going to let go of that lightly. So again, we didn't think through what are we going to do after we snatch Mr. Maduro, who, by the way, will get convicted, I'm sure. He'll end up behind bars for 20 years along with his wife. But his whole repressive regime remains intact.
General Barry McCaffrey, we're out of time. We so appreciate your assessment. So much more to cover, but we'll have to get to that in the days and weeks ahead. Thank you so much.
Good to be with you.